But so, Jeremy, what would you say is the biggest benefit of ripping your own discs?
So I would say for me, and alluding to something I commented on earlier, I'm like an organizational person. I've always been like a bit of a collector. And so I like the aspect of, curating something. I think a lot of people, you're not going to set up a DIY physical media ripping solution if you weren't probably already something of a collector mentality, because generally speaking, you should be starting to build that system out from a collection of discs that you've bought, right? And so, like any kind of library of something that you buy and maintain, right? Your books, your music, your movies, it says something about you. You chose to build that collection of stuff. You probably had your discs on shelves organized, a certain way, hands-on curating. And so the server, the Plex, the Infuse is like a digital manifestation of that. That makes it far more convenient to be able to just pull up and press play and skip the FBI warnings and skip the trailers and just get into your content and select it, all kind of at your fingertips. There's the pros of turning your physical shelved collection into something sitting on a server. I think that's the main pro of it, is the convenience and the accessibility factor. But for the whole umbrella of that, I think, to me, it speaks to me as being the collector and the access to the fact that, there's just been so much released on physical media, and not everything is always in like a digital storefront or a Kaleidescape storefront. They don't have all the studios. They don't, so there might be certain content that only ever was available on a physical media release that,
Right.
and you've got it and you can get it that way. So to me, that's kind of some of the poignant pros of that side.
I mean, that's like, pretty much agree on all of that. For me, I'm a very DIY type of person. I love, if I can do something myself, I'm gonna do it. I always kind of use the car detailing analogy. Some people love detailing their cars, other people hate it and pay someone else to
Hmm.
do it, and some people just
Yeah.
never do it. For me, I'm that guy that details his own car. I actually do. I detail my own car. I basically build my own theaters. If you watch the build series, so I'm very hands on, and I just love technology. So even though it's complicated, once I figure it out, I do actually enjoy the process of like taking a disc, converting it into an MKV, and then uploading it onto my Plex server. And then when it works, it's great. But this brings me to the other thing, which is what's the biggest like downside to ripping your own discs is
Yeah.
if you're doing the DIY route and you run into issues, how
Yeah.
how do you fix things if you don't if you run into those issues and you don't know? Well, you have to go to the internet, right? And
Yeah.
Reddit can be a great place for useful information, but finding it within Reddit is like finding a needle in a haystack, right? It's like the Wild West because
Yeah.
everybody's going to post their opinion. So going to a place like AVS Forum can be very beneficial in that way because it's a little bit easier. But I think that would be my biggest downside is when you do run into those issues. Uh, Even if it's something like, oh, my Plex server will constantly like drop frames sometimes, and the only way to fix it I found is to just reboot the shield.
Yeah.
And even then, sometimes it'll get a third of the way into the movie, it's dropping frames again, or it'll like the shield will just become unresponsive. So there's always little issues that you end up having to fix yourself or figure out yourself. I mean, it's like building computers, right? Like
Hmm.
if you've never built a computer and you build one and everything works, you're like, great. And then you build another one and you're like, oh crap, like it won't post. It won't
Yeah.
boot up. What's going on?
You're the
Now you have
support.
to yeah, now you have to like, okay, you're your own tech support, basically. And some people really are okay with that and some people are not.
Yeah.
And so that for me is the biggest like negative or knock against ripping your own discs. Would you have anything to add to that, Jeremy?
Yeah. So a few things. I think that the platform of doing the media server thing is kind of fraught with it's fraught with potential failure modes, right? Starting from the getting over the technicalities of getting the right contents off the disk. That's one. And nothing's more frustrating than having like a brand new, fresh, clean looking disk that fails to read, right?
Oh,
Wipe
yeah.
wipe it off, put it in. And you could just be totally, brand new disk out of a case might have a failure to read. And what are you going to do? Right? Take it back to the store, try and exchange it for another one, something like that. I think going like in a broader sense as well, one of the things that I don't think a lot of credence is given to in the DIY thing is like, and I don't want to get too much in this. I think it's almost a better topic for its own thing, but what is the future of physical media? And if looking back a little bit more than looking forward, we almost couldn't even rip 4K discs to begin with, right? When 4K discs first came out and AACS 2.0 copy protection came out,
Oh
it
yeah.
was it was 8 months maybe, I think, before the first, any DVD, the first software actually made those decryptable. And
Yeah.
then a little while, and then there was a whole bunch of like ramp up, in order to even make those discs rippable. Then AACS 2.1 came out, right? And some of those discs are not even still fully or cleanly rippable today. Luckily, that didn't get very widely adopted. It's only whatever a certain subset of releases ever actually use that. But we're only like that whole part of the hobby is only an AACS copy protection revision away from just being done forevermore. And will there be another physical media format? And if it does come out, are you going to be able to continue ripping it? So I think there's like, and I'll just, put it out there, like there's a cloud over that whole thing
Yeah.
for the longevity of it. Like what is the real path going to be forward? Because there are very deliberate risk factors. I think if not for COVID, the way physical media was going pre-COVID, there was very, very much a diminishment of like releases and 4K announcements and all that. And I think in some ways, like COVID kind of saved physical media, um, because there wasn't as much new content coming out. The studios went back to the catalog, and I think we're in a bit of a disc resurgence. So a couple of years ago, I was really prognosticating the diminishment of physical media. Now I feel like we're in the pretty massive resurgence of it. But I still think there's still a long term risk factor to it. And again, one copy protection revision away, because you can't put on your server what you can't rip. If you don't have the
Right.
disk with the contents and you can't decrypt those contents to get them off, you're not going to rip it. And then, other things as well, like you set up a big old 8 bay, 12 bay server loaded up with terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of storage, spend hundreds of hours, ripping 1,000 movies to it, and that thing gets taken out in a flood, fire, or surge.
Oh
Goodbye.
yeah.
Start over, right?
Yeah.